Have you ever sat in a peaceful afternoon, watching the clouds drift by, and asked yourself if you've been living for yourself or just to please others? Have you ever forced a smile, even when your heart felt heavy, just for fear of someone's judgmental gaze? In this life, each of us is like a solitary boat on the vast ocean. Others can accompany us, can share with us, but no one can steer for us. Therefore, life is a journey that we must take ourselves, and only we can feel which way the wind is blowing, whether the waves are crashing hard or softly. Long ago, someone asked the Buddha, "Venerable One, how can I please everyone?" The Buddha smiled and replied, "If you seek to please everyone, you will lose yourself. Live with a pure heart and mindfulness in line with the Dharma, and let praise and blame be worldly matters." This answer may seem simple, but for it to truly sink into your heart and for you to genuinely live by it is a long process of letting go and self-awareness. We are often bound by the gazes and comments of others. Sometimes it's just a casual remark, but it can bother us all day. We fear being misunderstood, fear being misjudged, fear others being displeased. But do you realize people will always have opinions? No matter what you do, someone will be unhappy. When you are poor, they say you are useless. When you succeed, they say you are arrogant. So, if you constantly chase after those words, will you ever find peace? Nature constantly reminds us of a simple truth. The lotus doesn't wait for praise to release its fragrance. The wind doesn't wait for adoration to be cool and refreshing. They simply live fully according to their true nature. Humans are the same. When we know who we are and dare to live authentically, only then do we find freedom. Life is inherently impermanent. Time flows like water and cannot be turned back. If we keep living for the gaze of others, we will miss precious moments to live for ourselves. You can listen to feedback, but don't let praise or criticism control your soul. A skillful person is one who keeps their mind like a calm lake, even if the wind stirs outside. Mindfulness helps us return to ourselves, recognize our emotions, and realize what is truly important. That is not about pleasing everyone, but about the peace that comes from knowing you are living in accordance with the Dharma, in accordance with your heart. Now, if you are listening to these words, close your eyes, relax your shoulders, take a deep breath, and feel each breath. Imagine in your mind a small candle burning, radiating warm light. That is you, your own light. No one can extinguish that light unless you allow it. From this moment, promise yourself that you will live fully for yourself, with a clear heart, and not let the noise of the world overshadow your inner voice. On some afternoons, when the late day sun slanted through the leaves, I would often sit quietly on the porch, listening to the wind caress the dry leaves and birds calling each other back to their nests. In those moments, I often thought about the path each of us is walking. Life is like a long road, sometimes a muddy red dirt path after a rain, sometimes a brightly lit boulevard in the city, and sometimes just a foggy path leading into deep mountains. Whether the road is wide or narrow, smooth or bumpy, in the end, it is still each person's own path. No one can walk in our stead, nor can anyone bear the responsibility for the steps we have taken. The Buddha's teaching once reminded us, by oneself is evil done. By oneself is one defiled. By oneself is evil left undone. By oneself is one purified. Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another. This saying, seemingly simple, contains a profound truth. We are the architects of our own destiny. Others can show us the way, support us, advise us, but they cannot walk for us. We also cannot push the responsibility of our lives onto anyone else. There's a story about a woman named Mai, whom I met at a retreat. She said that 10 years ago, she was a girl who lived entirely dependent on her husband. Every decision in life, from finances to work, she left to her husband. She thought that as long as someone protected her, she would always be safe. But then a major calamity struck. Her husband's business went bankrupt, debts piled up, and the family fell apart. For the first time, she clearly felt what it was like to stand on a dark, obscure path with no one to guide her. She fell into despair. But amidst days and nights of silent tears, she remembered the words of an old monk who once said, "When you visit the temple to worship the Buddha, you must walk every path yourself, for that is your karmic path. Others can guide you a few steps, but no one can walk to the end of the road for you." That very saying was like a flickering lamp in the darkness that helped her begin to stand up. She found a small job, initially just enough to support herself, then gradually paid off her debts. On rainy and windy days, she still cycled to work, sometimes cold and hungry. But she said that those very hardships trained her to be steady on her feet. She began to learn how to make her own decisions, take responsibility, and most importantly, no longer put her life in the hands of others. After many years, she not only paid off all her debts, but also opened a small bakery. Looking back, she was grateful for all the suffering. Because of it, she understood the greatest lesson. The path of life is her own, and she must walk it with her own 2 feet. The Buddha's words never encourage us to live separately or selfishly, but he taught each person to awaken themselves to live up to their own responsibilities. Many people keep waiting for someone to save them, but they forget that even the Buddha cannot grant anyone liberation if that person does not practice by themselves. The Buddha is only a guide. Whether to walk or not is up to each individual. When we realize this, we will stop blaming life, stop blaming fate, and begin to cultivate inner strength. Try looking at nature. A seed falls to the ground. It must crack its shell, extend its roots to find water, and reach up for light by itself. Whether it's persistent rain or scorching sun, no tree can grow for another tree. Every life has its own journey, and its beauty comes from its resilience in the face of challenges. Humans are the same. If we keep expecting others to bear all our difficulties, we will forever remain frail seedlings, never strong enough to bloom. I know some people listening to these words are also in a period of extreme weariness. Perhaps you just lost a job, went through a breakup, or lost a loved one. At such times, the path ahead truly seems very dark. But believe that even in the darkest night, there is still a small light from your own heart. Don't let dependence on others make you forget that you also have feet and hands to keep moving forward. Self-reliance is not about closing yourself off from the world, but about knowing you must stand firm before you can step forward to receive or give love. When we truly understand that the path of life is our own, we will no longer be overly concerned with what others think or say, because they cannot walk through the rough patches of the road for us. The only thing we need to care about is whether each step today is moving towards where we want to go, and whether each action today is planting seeds of peace for tomorrow. And then one day, looking back, we will see that all hardships have become proud footprints on our own path. Today, if you feel lonely or unsteady, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and tell yourself, "This path is mine. I will walk it, slowly but surely." Let each breath remind you that you are still here, still able to keep going. Every steady step today is a commitment to yourself that you will not abandon your life into anyone else's hands. There are days when we feel like a fragile leaf caught in a strong headwind. Every word from someone is like a cold gust of wind that touches us, leaving a chilling sensation in our hearts. Some praise, some criticize, some are unintentional, some are deliberate. And we let those sounds occupy our minds until our minds are no longer peaceful. In life, there will always be voices about us, even when we do the best we can. But what's important is not what people say, but whether we open our hearts to receive it. The ancients had a saying, "Worldly opinions are like the wind, blowing past and then dissipating." Yet not everyone is calm enough to see that the wind itself doesn't hurt. It's our clinging to that wind that makes us feel hurt. The Buddha once taught that life is like an inn. People come and go. Praise and criticism are just passing guests. If we let them stay too long, our minds will be heavy, and there will be no room for peace. Try to imagine your hands as two wooden doors. The door can open to welcome light, but it can also close against a storm. You are the one holding the key. No one has the right to force you to open the door if you don't want to. There are words we need to hear to learn, but there are also words we should let the wind carry away. Only when we know what to let in and what to leave outside the porch can we truly master our own peace. Efficacious Buddhist teachings recall, one autumn afternoon, walking by an empty lake, falling yellow leaves touched the water, creating spreading circular ripples. The wind was light, the lake surface calm. Only when a pebble fell did the water stir. People's words are like that pebble. If we give them too much attention, the lake in our hearts will constantly ripple. But if we just smile, let the pebble sink to the bottom without stirring, the water will quickly return to calm. That is the power of letting go of worldly opinions. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha once said, "No one in this world escapes praise and blame. Even the pure, like the Buddha, are criticized. How then can we, ordinary mortals full of faults, avoid it?" When we deeply understand this, we realize that chasing after pleasing everyone is futile. The more we try to explain, the more we try to prove ourselves right, the deeper we get caught in the vortex of gossip and criticism. Long ago, there was a story about an old man and his grandson leading a donkey to the market. At first, the old man walked while the grandson rode. Passers-by saw this and said, "How absurd! The old man has to walk while the boy rides." Hearing this, he switched places with the grandson walking and himself riding. After a short distance, someone else said, "The old man is so selfish, making the little boy walk in the sun." So both of them rode the donkey. But then there were voices of criticism. How cruel! 2 people making a skinny donkey carry such a heavy load. Finally, the old man and his grandson decided to walk together, leading the donkey. But still there were jeers. How foolish, having a donkey and not riding it. Life is like that. No matter what we do, someone will comment. Only when we listen to ourselves will we stop being swayed by worldly opinions. Letting go of worldly opinions doesn't mean we become insensitive or ignore all feedback. On the contrary, it is the mindfulness to distinguish between constructive feedback and words that only cause more distress. The wise listen to understand, not to be hurt. Like a gardener, they know how to choose good seeds to plant and discard the empty or worm-eaten ones. Our minds are the same. Let's plant good and wholesome words there, and let the garbage of gossip be carried away by the wind. Sometimes, excessive concern for what others say makes us forget ourselves. We live to be praised, to please the majority, but we don't know what we truly need. Only when alone at night do we realize our exhaustion. The Buddha taught, "Be an island unto yourself." If we keep focusing on external storms, we will never find a peaceful shore. Letting go of worldly opinions means returning to listen to the call of our heart. It is choosing a peaceful path for ourselves. Criticism is often just a reflection of the speaker's insecurity. Insecure people often try to put others down to feel superior. If we understand that, we will no longer be angry or hurt. We will smile, feeling compassion for the suffering that makes them utter those words. When our heart has compassion, we are no longer hurt by gossip. Just like a lotus flower, even growing in mud, retains its pure fragrance. I once met a friend who was very sensitive to comments. Just a casual remark from someone would make her lose sleep all night. One time, she came to the temple and asked the nun, "What should I do not to be hurt by people's words?" The nun smiled, gave her a glass of water, dropped a handful of salt into it, and told her to drink it. She grimaced because it was very salty. Then the nun led her to the lake, dropped a handful of salt into the water, and invited her to drink a sip. She said, "The water is sweet and cool, not salty at all." The nun said, "People's words are like salt. Your mind is like water. When your mind is narrow, a little salt can make life bitter. When your mind is vast, a whole handful of salt cannot make it salty." Letting go of worldly opinions is expanding your mind like the surface of a lake so that the salt grains of gossip dissolve without a trace. Sitting on the temple porch one quiet afternoon, listening to the echoing sound of the bell, I suddenly realized that a bell, no matter how far its sound resonates, cannot be held in space. It just passes and then fades away. People's words are the same. As long as we don't hold on to them, they will naturally dissolve. Holding on only burdens the heart. Let go, and you will feel light as a cloud. And when the heart is light, the light of peace will find its way to you. So whenever you are hurt by someone's words, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine your ears as 2 soft wooden doors. Those doors can close to keep the home of your soul peaceful. Outside, the wind still blows, leaves still fall, but inside, you are serene. No one can give you that peace, only you. can give it to yourself. And today, if your heart feels unsteady because of the voices of others, remember that you were not born to please everyone. You came here to experience, to learn, to love, to live authentically. Let worldly opinions pass like white clouds, so your mind can be illuminated by the sun of inner freedom. In that light, all gossip becomes small, and you will realize that the most precious thing is not recognition from others, but agreement from your own heart. There are afternoons when you stand in a crowded street and suddenly feel heavy-hearted for no specific reason, just because of a casual remark someone made. That remark is like a pebble dropped into a calm lake, creating small ripples that gradually spread, causing the lake to lose its initial serenity. All of us have been like this, allowing the comments, judgments, or even just the gaze of others to dominate our emotions. But if you sit down and look deeply, you will realize one thing. You cannot control the tongues of others, but you can completely choose your own response. The Buddha once taught that no one can hurt us without our permission. This saying may seem simple, but when applied to life, it is a practice requiring great mindfulness. People can say whatever they want, for their words belong to them. But our emotions belong to us, and we have the right to protect them. It's like when it rains. We cannot order the rain to stop, but we can open an umbrella so as not to get wet. In life, others' words are sometimes like sudden rainstorms that we cannot stop, but we can shelter ourselves. I once heard a story about an old Zen master living in the mountains. One day, someone from the town came up, bringing a rumor that the master had done wrong. This person came to the temple courtyard, pointed a finger, and cursed him with harsh words. The disciples were indignant and intended to drive him away. But the Zen master smiled and said, "If someone gives you a gift and you don't accept it, to whom does that gift belong?" The disciples replied, "To the giver." The master nodded. "Exactly. The same applies to insults. If you don't accept them, they will not belong to you." This story is so gentle, yet it etched itself deeply in my mind because it shows that our reaction is the boundary between peace and suffering. In reality, you might say, "But I am also human. I also know sadness and anger. How can I not react?" That's right. Emotions are natural, but the difference lies in how we react. Some people, when criticized, immediately retaliate, sometimes with words harsher than the opponent's. The result is both sides are hurt, like pouring oil on a fire. But there are also people who, upon hearing harsh words, just faintly smile or silently walk away. They are not weak. It's because they understand that they don't need to turn their soul into a battlefield just to prove something. If you pay attention, you will notice something interesting. Most of our discomfort doesn't come from the words themselves, but from how we interpret and replay them in our minds. It's like someone tying a stone to their foot and then complaining about not being able to swim. We tie other people's words to our minds and then complain about not being peaceful. When someone criticizes you, try to pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, is this true? If it is, what can I learn? If not, do I need to carry it with me? That small question is the key to not getting caught in an emotional spiral. A friend of mine once experienced this. She worked in a company, and a colleague frequently made sarcastic remarks as if to belittle her abilities. At first, she was very upset. Every evening, she would tell her husband about it, and then brood over it, losing sleep. But after a Dharma talk, she realized that what her colleague said was their business, and her business was to keep her mind from being swept away. She began to practice not reacting immediately, simply responding with a smile or silence. As time passed, she noticed she was no longer tired of those words. When her colleague no longer saw a reaction from her, they gradually stopped making sarcastic remarks. This is clear evidence that when we master our reactions, we can change the surrounding environment. Buddhism doesn't teach us to become like stone in the face of all words, but teaches us to observe our minds. When those words arise, like watching a cloud drift across the sky, we realize that emotions are also just passing guests. If we don't cling to them, they will leave gently. Freedom is not about making others silent, but about no longer being chained by our own hasty reactions. In every moment, you always have two choices. Either react habitually, letting emotions lead the way, or pause for a moment, letting wisdom illuminate. Just a slow breath, just an inward glance, can save you from an inner storm. And you will realize that not reacting doesn't mean you agree with what people say, but that you choose not to let them control your emotions. Imagine your mind as a garden. If you let harsh words fall into it and don't pull them out, they will grow into thorny bushes that wound you every time you touch them. But if you recognize them as bad seeds and gently discard them, the garden will remain green and full of fragrant flowers. Your peace is a precious piece of land. Don't let anyone plant toxic seeds there. The wonderful thing is that when you cultivate this habit, you will feel much lighter. Praise and criticism will no longer shake you as before. You will begin to live authentically, not to please anyone, nor for fear of what others think. And when your mind is settled, you will naturally radiate that peaceful energy to those around you. They will feel that when they are near you, they don't need to be defensive. They don't need to compete. The Buddha once said, "The mind is like calm water, reflecting all things without holding on to them." When you master your reactions, your mind will be like that water, still reflecting both buoyant and good things, but retaining nothing. You will see that true freedom is not about changing the external world, but about changing the internal world. And if today you are still easily saddened by others' words, please know that it doesn't make you weak or inferior. It just means you are on the path of learning to love and protect yourself. Be patient. Every time you choose silence instead of reacting, every time you choose forgiveness instead of anger, you are watering the seed of peace in your heart. Then one day, you will find yourself standing amidst so much noise, yet still clearly hearing your own gentle whisper. Remember, others have the right to speak, but you have the right to choose whether to hold on or let go. And when you choose to let go, you are giving yourself the most precious gift, peace that no one can take away. There are afternoons when the sky is gray and the rain falls incessantly, tapping a rhythm on the eaves as if reminding us of days gone by. Sitting with a warm cup of tea, watching raindrops fall on the porch, our hearts suddenly recall past mistakes that kept us sleepless with regret. there are nights of tossing and turning, asking ourselves why we said that, why we did that, only to blame ourselves, as if this whole life would never escape the shadow of the past. But in life, who hasn't made mistakes? And those very mistakes, if we know how to look at them with the eyes of mindfulness, are invaluable gifts that help us grow. The Buddha once taught that the wise see their faults as they would an enemy and immediately distance themselves from them, but also know to be grateful because they lead to awakening. Mistakes are not deep stains in life, but clumsy steps on the path of learning to be human. Like a young seedling that initially doesn't know how to reach for the light. Sometimes it bends, sometimes it withers from lack of water. But it is precisely those times of wilting that make its roots cling deeper to the earth, so that one day, when the rain comes, it revives more strongly than ever. We are the same. Stumbling makes us hurt, but it is also an opportunity for us to find the hidden strength within ourselves. The efficacious Buddhist teachings. Channel once encountered a woman who, in that year, suffered a bitter failure at work, lost all her capital, and was mocked by many. For a long time, she closed her heart, unwilling to meet anyone, and the feeling of shame clung to her daily. But then, on one autumn morning, when yellow leaves filled the small path, she went to the park and sat by the lake. Looking at the leaves falling from the branches, she suddenly understood that a tree does not fear losing its leaves, because it is the law of nature. Leaves fall so that in spring the tree can sprout anew. She began to let go of self-blame, viewing failure as a season of falling leaves, and promised herself to plant new seeds. A year later, she returned to work, calmer, wiser, and more successful than before. She said that if it hadn't been for that fall, she might never have known how strong she was. In life, we often mistakenly believe that happiness only comes when we make no mistakes. But the Buddha taught that impermanence is the nature of life. And it is in that impermanence that mistakes are a natural part of the growth process. Like waves on the sea, sometimes calm, sometimes turbulent, but all contribute to the symphony of the vast ocean. If we just stand on the shore, afraid to venture out, fearing we will be swept away by the waves, we will never see the beauty of the wide sea. Similarly, if we stop moving forward, for fear of making mistakes, we will lose the opportunity to discover ourselves and reach better things. But to learn from mistakes, we must first dare to look at them directly, without avoiding them or agonizing over them for too long. Face them with compassion for yourself, as you would comfort a suffering friend. In the Dhammapada, there is a verse: "The one who sees their fault, abandons it, and corrects it, is like a cloud dispersing, and the sun shining clearly." When we recognize our faults, what is important is not self-punishment, but learning to transform them into more positive motivation. For every mistake, if viewed with the eyes of wisdom, will be a brick building the sturdy house of our character. You can imagine life as a garden. Every time we make a mistake, it's like we accidentally plant a weed seed. If we just stand there complaining, the garden will be covered with weeds. But if we patiently pull them out, nurture the soil, and plant good seeds, one day that garden will be filled with fragrant flowers, The miracle is that the very places where weeds once grew become the most fertile, because the soil has been turned and cared for more. Mistakes are the same. They can be the best ground to sow the seeds of change. I want you to try to recall a past mistake that you once agonized over. Now, look at it as a gift wrapped in ugly, crumpled paper. Inside that gift might be a lesson, an opportunity, or a door opening to a new direction. We cannot change what we have done, but we can change the meaning we assign to it. And when the meaning changes, the heart will feel lighter, and our steps will be firmer. In the early mornings, when the sun is still shy behind the mountain range, take a few minutes to sit quietly. Take a deep breath. Exhale slowly, and whisper to yourself, I have made mistakes, but I have also learned. I allow myself to move forward. This statement is like a morning dewdrop falling onto the soul, soothing old scratches and reawakening the belief that we deserve a new day, full of hope. Life is inherently something no one can live for another, and no one can entirely avoid missteps. But if we learn from our mistakes, we will walk through rough paths with a more peaceful mind, because every step, even a faltering one, brings us closer to maturity. And at some point, looking back, you will smile with gratitude for even the mistakes that once caused you pain, because it is thanks to them that you have become who you are today. When the late afternoon sun slanted down to the earth, we suddenly felt our hearts soften. Amidst the hurried pace of life, amidst countless noisy voices jostling in our heads, we suddenly asked ourselves, who am I living for? Am I truly myself? Or am I just wearing a mask that others want to see? This question may seem simple, but when we pause to reflect, we realize that for so many years, we have lived too much for the gaze, words, and judgments of others. Sometimes we have forgotten our true face, forgotten our true heart, just for fear of being ridiculed or left behind. People often say that living authentically is the easiest thing, but also the hardest. Easy, because we just need to return to ourselves, living in accordance with our true feelings and aspirations. Difficult, because we have become so accustomed to wearing masks to protect ourselves from the eyes of the world. Therefore, many people are exhausted because every day is a performance where the lead role is not genuinely themselves. But do you know? The Buddha once taught that whoever lives authentically, they will fear nothing. Because when we live sincerely with ourselves, we no longer have to struggle to maintain a false image. We are free to be ourselves. No matter what the world thinks, sincerity is not just how we treat others, but first and foremost, it is the attitude we have towards ourselves. There was a woman who once sought out a Zen master and said that she didn't know why she always felt insecure, even though her family was stable and financially secure. The Zen master asked her, "How do you live?" The woman replied that she lived to please everyone, from her family to friends and colleagues. She never dared to say what she truly wanted, for fear of others being unhappy. The Zen master smiled, led her to the garden, and pointed to a blooming lotus flower. He said, "Don't you see? The lotus doesn't try to be a rose or a chrysanthemum. It simply blooms according to its inherent nature. And that's why it is so beautiful. If you keep forcing yourself to live according to others' wishes, you will never bloom as yourself. Being authentic with oneself is not selfishness or indifference to the feelings of others. It is the courage to look directly into your heart, to acknowledge what you truly want, what you truly believe. When we are honest with ourselves, we will know what to keep and what to let go of. We no longer pay too much attention to the voices around us because we have found the most important voice, our own. In meditation, there is a beautiful lesson. Sit down, close your eyes, and listen to each breath. When thoughts about others arise, let them pass like clouds. Don't hold on to them. Instead, ask yourself, right now, what brings me peace? In this way, we gradually return inward, realizing that peace doesn't come from being praised or accepted by everyone, but from self-acceptance. Another story tells of a young novice monk who, upon entering the temple, tried every day to do everything quickly and perfectly to earn praise from the abbot. But it seemed the harder he tried, the more he was reminded of minor mistakes. One day, he was discouraged and asked the abbot why, even though he tried his best, the abbot was still not satisfied. The abbot replied, "I don't need you to work to please me. I only need you to work with all your presence and sincerity. If you wash dishes, just wash dishes, without thinking about being praised. If you sweep the yard with all your heart, not hoping anyone will see. Then you will find peace." In fact, one of the root causes of human insecurity is not living authentically. People constantly chase after the crowd, after trends, after standards set by society. But the Buddha taught that all standards are impermanent. What is honored today may be criticized tomorrow. What makes us proud today may become a burden tomorrow. If we pay too much attention to such changes, our minds will be swept away endlessly. Living with a stable mind means we establish a firm foundation within ourselves, so that no matter how fiercely the external storms may blow, we remain unshaken. A stable mind is not rigidity, but softness, yet steadfastness. Like a flexible bamboo tree that bends with the wind, but whose roots hold deep in the earth and never uproot. When we are authentic with ourselves, the roots of our mind will also cling deeply to the soil of truth, and from there we can stand firm against all praise and criticism. One morning, as you sit by the window, watching the sunlight stream through the leaves, try closing your eyes and asking yourself how you want to live, so that when you close your eyes for the last time, you have no regrets. That answer will not come from books, nor from the mouths of others, but from your heart. Trust it, for that is the call of sincerity. To live authentically, sometimes we have to accept losing some relationships, some support. But what we gain in return is serenity. When we no longer strain ourselves to please anyone, we have time to love ourselves and love life fully. And strangely enough, when we stop trying to be accepted, we become more attractive, because others will feel the inner peace radiating from within us. Ultimately, remember that no one lives our entire life for us. They can accompany us for a part of the journey, but only we know where we need to go. So don't be afraid to live authentically, because living authentically is the only way to find peace, no matter how the world changes. And if today you feel weary from living according to others' expectations, stop for a moment, take a deep breath, and tell yourself, I allow myself to live as I am. When you say that, from the depths of your heart, you will feel a gentle light spreading throughout your body. That is the light of freedom, of authenticity, of a soul that has begun to return to itself. One afternoon, as the sun slowly set, painting the western sky golden with twilight, I sat on the porch, watching the last leaves of autumn sway and fall. In that moment, I suddenly realized that no matter how many displeasing things there are in life, there are still so many things to be grateful for. A gentle breeze blew through, carrying the scent of damp earth after the rain, calming my heart. I thought about the people who had crossed my life's path. Some left smiles, some left wounds. But strangely, if I looked deeply, I saw that all of them contributed to making me who I am today. The Buddha once taught that a grateful heart is the door to peace. When we are grateful, we no longer focus solely on shortcomings, but also recognize the seeds of goodness silently growing within us. Be grateful to parents who gave us life. Be grateful to companions, and even grateful for adversities that forged our resilience. Even when life throws harsh challenges at us, we can still find a reason to be thankful. Because no seed sprouts on flat ground. Only when buried deep in the dark earth and enduring much rain and sun does it grow vibrant and green. I once met a woman over 50 years old. Her eyes were deep and gentle. She recounted having gone through very difficult years. Her husband, whom she trusted, left the family when she was young, leaving her alone to raise 2 small children. Initially, she harbored resentment and hatred. But then, during a visit to the temple, she heard the abbot preach that hatred is like holding a burning coal in your hand. It only burns yourself. She seemed to awaken. She began to look at her life with different eyes, the eyes of gratitude. She was grateful for having 2 children who were her motivation to live. She was grateful that the challenges taught her strength, and then she also learned to forgive the person who had hurt her. Forgiveness was not for the other person to be lightened, but for her heart to stop being chained by hatred. The Buddha's teachings on compassion and letting go of resentment are actually very simple, but difficult to practice. A wise person is not someone who is never hurt, but someone who knows how to transform wounds into lessons and love. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha once said, "By hatred, hatred does not cease. By love, hatred ceases." This is not just a theory to comfort us, but a path of practice. Every day when we let go of hatred, our heart will be like a calm lake, reflecting a peaceful sky. But forgiveness is not forgetting, nor is it accepting wrongdoing. Forgiveness is when we face the pain, understand its origin, and then set down that burden to move forward. Sometimes people hurt us because they themselves are suffering. If we understand that, our hearts will soften. It's like when we see a tree leaning due to a storm. We don't blame it for casting a shadow on the road, but only wish it could stand firm again. In the journey of life, gratitude and forgiveness are like 2 wings that help us fly over dark skies. A person who only harbors resentment will be like a boat forever anchored in a harbor, never venturing out to sea. But when we are grateful and forgive, we unmoor the anchor so that the boat of our heart can float into the wide ocean, where light shines and waves are just the melodies of life. I once heard a story about a prisoner who was released after many years of unjust imprisonment. When he walked out of the prison gates, someone asked if he hated those who had put him in such misery. He smiled and replied, "If I carry hatred, I will still be a prisoner. Only the walls will no longer confine me." That answer left me speechless. It turns out that true freedom is not about where we are, but about how many invisible chains we carry in our hearts. Gratitude is similar. Many people think gratitude is when we receive something good from someone. But if that's all it is, our gratitude is limited. True gratitude is when we realize that everything that happens in life is a gift, whether wrapped in roses or sharp thorns. Sometimes that gift is a smile. Sometimes it's a scar. But both teach us something precious. If each morning we wake up, we silently give thanks for another day to live, thanks for still having eyes to see the green of the leaves, still having feet to walk on the path we choose, then our heart will naturally warm, just as when we stand before the sea and hear the waves crashing on the shore. Whether the waves are big or small, we still see the wetness of the ocean, and our hearts expand with it. People who live with gratitude will not easily be drawn into the spiral of comparison and envy, because they know that they have enough and that what they have is unique and irreplaceable. They also don't pay too much attention to the gazes or comments of others, because their worth is not found in praise or criticism. And when we are grateful, we will forgive more easily. Forgiveness is like cool water flowing over dry land, revitalizing the young shoots of love. Forgiveness doesn't change the past, but changes the future. Forgiveness doesn't erase the wound, but stops it from bleeding. Forgiveness is not because the other person deserves it, but because we deserve peace. If you are harboring resentment, try letting it go just once. Not for the other person to be forgiven, but for you to be free. Just as when we drop a stone into water, the ripples gradually dissipate, and the lake returns to calm. Practice gratitude every day, starting from the smallest things. Be grateful that it's sunny today, so you can dry your clothes. Be grateful for the rain that refreshes the trees. Be grateful for a warm meal with family. And when gratitude becomes a habit, you will see how worthwhile this life is. My dear friend, life is short. Don't let your days pass filled only with complaints and suffering. Dedicate the time you have left to love, to gratitude, to forgiveness. Because when we are grateful and forgive, we not only heal ourselves, but also plant a seed of peace in this world. And who knows, one day, that very seed might bloom in someone else's heart, and they will continue to spread love further. Some days, you sit by the window, looking out at the misty morning sky, listening to birds calling to each other from the rustling leaves. A gentle breeze drifts through, carrying the scent of damp earth and wild flowers, making your heart feel both peaceful and a little heavy. Because in that moment, you realize you have lived so many years just to please others. From small things like choosing an outfit, eating a meal, to big decisions like choosing a career or even a life partner. Everything seemed to be influenced by the gazes and words of others. And as the wind still blows, you ask yourself, what have I missed in my own life? People often think that living for others is a precious virtue, a manifestation of kindness, of sacrifice. But sometimes kindness turns into shackles when we can no longer distinguish between true love and self-loss. The Buddha once taught that each person is born with their own karma, their own path, their own happiness. No one can fully walk another's lifetime for them. If we live only to accommodate others' wishes, ignoring the call of our own heart, then we are abandoning ourselves, closing the door to inner freedom and true happiness. There was a woman I once knew named Han. From a young age, Han was accustomed to having to please her parents. She chose her school according to her father's wishes, and her friends according to her mother's approval. When she grew up, she married the man her family said was a good match for her fate and age, even though her heart still clung to an unfinished first love. The job she did was not her passion, but it was what everyone said was stable and secure. Han never dared to say no, never dared to stand up for her dreams, because she feared the disappointed looks of others, feared whispers and gossip. Years passed, and she became a gentle wife, a capable mother, a diligent employee. Everyone who looked at her praised her as a model woman. But at night, when the house was silent, she sat alone on the porch. Watching the moonlight scatter on the patch of grass, tears fell uncontrollably. She remembered once dreaming of becoming a literature teacher, wanting to write books, wanting to travel to distant lands. Now, all those dreams were like seeds buried deep, with no sunlight to sprout. She realized she had lived half her life without ever truly living for herself. The Buddha's teaching in the Dhammapada resonated like a bell. Be an island unto yourself. Who else can be your refuge? The Buddha doesn't tell us to be selfish or indifferent to others, but he reminds us that love and help are only truly complete when we are whole within ourselves. A person who has lost themselves, lost their dreams and inner freedom, can hardly offer genuine love to others, because inside them is only emptiness and weariness. When Han came to the temple one autumn, Bodhi leaves fell scattered along the path. She told the nun about her weariness. The nun just smiled gently, poured her a hot cup of tea, and said, "My dear, living to please everyone is impossible. And if it were possible, the price you'd pay would be losing yourself. When you are no longer yourself, what do you have left to give anyone?" These words were like a cool breeze blowing through her heart, causing her accumulated weariness to suddenly subside. From then on, she began to learn to listen to herself. She spent time each morning sitting quietly by the window, writing a few lines in a diary, asking herself what she wanted, what she needed today. Initially, the change surprised her family, even leading to reproaches. But then, seeing Han gradually become more radiant and vibrant, they understood that only those who know how to love themselves can truly love others. Sometimes we have to accept that no matter how hard we try, some people will still be displeased. It's like rain. Some people like it, some hate it. Flowers bloom. Some gaze in fascination. Others complain they cause allergies. We cannot live our lives like a flower just to please everyone. A flower is most beautiful when it blooms in its own way, welcoming the sun, welcoming the rain, releasing its fragrance at the right time, in the right season. The Buddha once taught that the wise illuminate their own path, like the moon escaping the clouds. When we let go of the desire to please everyone, we truly step out from the clouds of prejudice and pressure, allowing our inner light to shine forth. And the marvelous thing is that when we live authentically, we naturally attract like-minded people, people who love us for who we truly are, not for the image we try to create to please them. Try to imagine one early morning, you step out onto the porch, seeing dewdrops still clinging to the leaves, taking a deep breath, and telling yourself, "Today I will live a day for myself." With all love and mindfulness, you will feel the world open up. Each step, each breath will be lighter. You will realize that kindness is still there, but it is no longer blind sacrifice. Kindness now becomes a light radiating from a fulfilled soul, not the flickering light of a dying candle. If you have ever been like Han, living half your life just to please others, please know that it is never too late to return. Like a river, no matter how winding, it eventually finds the sea. As long as you dare to step out of the molds others have drawn for you, you will see a wide open path, and the wind of freedom will embrace you. And when night falls, lean by the window, look at the moonlight shimmering through the leaves, and smile gently. Be grateful for the days gone by, whether they were days of sacrifice or loss, for they taught you the value of living authentically. And from today, you will choose to live a full life, not to please anyone, but for your heart to be at peace, for your soul to be free, and for your smile to truly bloom from deep within. On the brick path leading to the temple gate, a middle-aged man walked slowly. His face clearly showed concern, his eyes seemingly searching for an answer he hadn't found for a long time. He approached the monk, bowed respectfully, and spoke in a heavy voice. "Master, I don't understand why I always feel weary when interacting with others. I find everyone has something to criticize. My heart feels full of judgments. Then, when someone says something unkind, I get angry and upset for days." The monk smiled, poured him a hot cup of tea, and said, "Drink this tea, then we can talk. But first, please sit down, take a deep breath, and look back at yourself." This story reminds me of the Buddha's teaching. When looking at others, observe their purpose and starting point before rushing to conclusions. Because each person carries their own story, a past, circumstances, and even wounds that we cannot see with the naked eye. Sometimes the words or actions that bother us are just the result of some pain they are enduring. If we rush to judgment, it's like using misty eyes to see the world, and naturally, what we see will not be complete. Try to imagine walking on a village road early in the morning, with mist still covering the bamboo groves. You see a figure ahead, walking unsteadily, arms flailing. If you only look with your naked eye, you might think the person is drunk or intentionally doing something odd. But as you get closer, you see they are trying to keep balance because of an injured leg. At that moment, the judgmental mind within you naturally dissolves, giving way to understanding and compassion. Humans are the same. If we only look at the outside, we easily form prejudices. But when we understand the reason, our hearts open up. The Buddha once said, "The wise not only see things by their external form, but also look deeply into their essence and underlying causes." A contemplative person will ask, why did they act that way? What made them become like that? Only by asking these questions can we escape the habit of judging others based on our own standards. And only then can we truly see ourselves, because how we see others is a mirror reflecting our own consciousness. I once met a young girl at the temple, sitting in a corner, crying for a long time. When I approached to ask what was wrong, she said, "I hate my mother so much. She's always grumpy and says harsh words. I feel like she doesn't love me." I was silent for a moment and then asked her, "Do you know why your mother is like that?" She shook her head. I told her the story of a mother in the village who, from childhood, had lived in poverty, endured many hardships, and had never been embraced or spoken to gently by anyone. As she grew up, she developed a habit of being tough, speaking dryly. But deep inside, she loved her child immensely. She just didn't know how to express it. After listening, the girl was silent for a long time, and then whispered, "Maybe my mother is like that too." Her eyes then were different. They were no longer full of only blame, but mixed with a little pity. Understanding instead of criticizing. That is the path of compassion. When we choose understanding, we are also protecting our minds from resentment and hurt. Judgment is like a fire. Once lit, it not only burns others, but also burns our own peace. Understanding, on the other hand, is like cool water that soothes and softens the sharp edges of the soul. But how can we look at people with the eyes of understanding? The Buddha taught that before looking at others, look at yourself. Because we, too, have made mistakes, been clumsy, and hurt someone without even realizing it. When we recall those moments, we will find it easier to empathize with others. That is why, in contemplative meditation, people often start by reflecting on themselves, identifying their own weaknesses and ignorance, and then expanding that to see the suffering of all beings. Once a disciple asked the Buddha, "Venerable One, how can I love everyone, even those who harm me?" The Buddha replied, "Remember that in countless cycles of rebirth, you have sometimes harmed others, and sometimes you have helped them. Each person has, at some point, been your father, mother, siblings. When you see this, your mind will no longer criticize, but will seek to help them escape suffering." Practicing this in daily life is not easy. We live in a noisy society where judgment is almost a natural reflex. As soon as someone dresses unusually, speaks awkwardly, or offers a contrary opinion, there is immediately a barrage of comments. But if you try to pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, have I fully understood their story? You will find your mind settling down, becoming less rushed. When you look at others, remember that you are only looking through a blurry mirror. That mirror is covered by your experiences, memories, prejudices, and emotions. To see clearly, we need to wipe away that dust, which means letting go of the ego and opening our hearts to receive. Then, we will see each person as a flower in a large garden. Some flowers bloom brilliantly, some are still shy, some are bitten by worms, but all are trying to reach for the light. And looking back at oneself is equally important. When we realize that we, too, have had shortcomings, have sometimes behaved incorrectly, we will see that judging others is meaningless. We will understand that what is important is not criticism, but finding ways to help each other improve. If you feel your heart is still full of annoyance every time you interact with someone, try practicing contemplation every evening. Before sleeping, recall the people you met during the day and ask yourself, what did they go through today? What can I do to understand them better? By practicing this, each day you will find your heart opening and your eyes becoming less cold. Finally, the message I want to convey is that when we look at people with understanding, we are also nurturing inner peace. And when we look back at ourselves with compassion, we are planting seeds for lasting happiness. Don't let your eyes only see faults. Let your heart recognize the light within each person. Because who knows, that very light might illuminate the path you are on, helping you realize that this world is still full of lovely things, even if it sometimes wears a thorny exterior. Some afternoons, when the sun's light has softened and the wind gently rustles through the trees, I often sit on the porch watching a yellow leaf fall from its branch. That leaf departed, not because it wanted to, but because its time had come. It couldn't hold on, nor could it let anyone else decide for it. I suddenly thought, life is the same. Living amidst countless relationships, we sometimes forget an important truth. No one can live our life for us. And when we don't have our own principles, we are easily swept away by the winds of public opinion and the expectations of others, thus losing ourselves. A person without principles is like a boat without a compass sailing on the vast sea, not knowing where its harbor is. When waves crash, that boat sways, easily submerged, or drifts endlessly without returning. Life is the same. If we don't know where we are going, if we don't set healthy boundaries for ourselves, then others' trust in us will gradually diminish. And most importantly, we will lose faith in ourselves. The Buddha once taught that practitioners must maintain precepts as one protects one's eyes. Precepts here are not just the monastic rules, but also the living principles of each individual. Maintaining precepts is maintaining clarity, keeping the mind from being swept away by temptation and delusion. A person with principles is not rigid, but knows what to do and what not to do. They know what helps them move closer to peace, and what will pull them away from it. Efficacious Buddhist teachings once knew a kind and good-hearted friend, but who, wanting to please everyone, gradually lost herself. She took on every task, nodded to every request, even accepted things against her conscience just to maintain harmony. As time passed, people got used to her always being available, and when she refused just once, they began to complain and reproach. At that moment, she realized she had let others step too far into her territory, simply because she hadn't set boundaries from the beginning. Living principles are the fence protecting the soul. They don't allow others to easily infringe upon the inner peace within us, and self-respect is the foundation of that fence. Self-respect is not arrogance, but knowing how to cherish oneself, not allowing oneself to do things contrary to one's core values. When we respect ourselves, others will also learn to respect us. But to maintain principles, we must dare to face disapproving gazes, must accept that we cannot please everyone. This is something many people fear because everyone wants to be liked. However, as the Buddha taught, all phenomena are impermanent, and the human mind changes every moment. Today they praise, tomorrow they may criticize. If we let our minds be swayed by such praise and criticism, we will spend our entire lives living in fear of displeasing others. Try to imagine a river. The river water can be clear or muddy, depending on the time, but its current still flows towards the sea. People with principles are the same. They can still be flexible in their interactions, but their direction and values do not change. No matter how many detours, they will always return to the core beliefs they hold true. Living with principles also requires us to choose a suitable living environment, because a lotus wanting to retain its fragrance cannot grow in a garbage-filled swamp. The environment around us, our friends, the stories we hear, the things we do every day, all deeply influence our living principles. If surrounded by negative voices, sarcastic remarks, or unethical actions, we will need to be very mindful, not to be drawn in. It's best to seek out a healthy environment where people appreciate each other's values, encourage progress, listen, and share. Someone asked me, but what if my current environment isn't good, and I can't leave right away? I smiled. Just like a pine tree standing amidst a snow-covered winter, it remains green and reaches upwards even as the cold wind blows. If you can't leave yet, you can still protect yourself, nurture good values in your heart, and find a way to create a small, peaceful space for yourself where your soul can rest and recover. I remember in the Dhammapada, the Buddha once said, "By oneself is evil done. By oneself is one defiled. By oneself is evil left undone. By oneself is one purified." Purity and impurity depend on oneself. No one can purify another. Living principles are the same. No one can maintain them for us. No one can respect us for ourselves. And there will be times when we realize that when we are steadfast in our principles, people might not like us, but they will trust us. Because trust comes not from empty promises, but from consistency in action. Say what you mean, and do what you say. Even in Buddhist practice, if there is no steadfast adherence to precepts, practitioners will easily be pulled away by delusive thoughts. Similarly, in everyday life, if we don't maintain principles, we will be led by circumstances and people instead of holding the steering wheel of our own lives. People who maintain principles and have self-respect will have a special kind of peace. They don't need to boast or prove their worth through the eyes of others. That peace is like the surface of a lake in the early morning. The wind gently stirs it, but the water doesn't become cloudy because the bottom of the lake is stable. My dear friend, if today you are weary from having to please too many people, if you feel you are living according to others' wishes more than your own, stop for a moment. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, is this truly necessary for my happiness and peace? If the answer is no, then bravely put it down. Because maintaining principles is not to fight against the world, but to protect yourself, to prevent your mind from being swept away by trivial matters. Then one day, you will realize that by respecting yourself, you will also know how to respect everyone around you, not imposing on them, not trying to change them, but simply living your own part fully. And then, life becomes much lighter. If I could send you an image, I would send the image of a small lamp in the darkness. That lamp doesn't try to illuminate the whole world. It quietly maintains its own light. And then anyone passing by will be warmed by it to some extent. You are the same. When you maintain your principles and self-respect, you will become a source of light for your own life. And that light will spread naturally, without effort. And even if there are people who don't understand you, who don't agree with you, that's okay. Because, as the Buddha taught, each person walks their own path, reaping lessons suitable for their karmic connections. What you need to do is walk your path with steady feet, with a whole heart, and with an inner light that never extinguishes. One day, I met a woman sitting quietly by the lake. The water rippled gently, and the wind blew lightly, carrying the gentle fragrance of milk flowers. She wasn't crying, but her distant gaze seemed to contain an entire ocean that had just weathered a storm. When I sat down beside her, she just faintly smiled, and then said that she had just decided to leave a job she had been with for 10 years, to leave relationships that weighed heavily on her heart. She said, it took me many years to understand that true happiness is not about holding on tightly, but about daring to let go. Her words immediately reminded me of the Buddha's teaching. All phenomena are impermanent. Clinging only brings suffering. Nothing in this life lasts forever. People come and go. Opportunities come and pass. Even we ourselves change every day. Yet, subconsciously, we keep trying to hold on to things that are no longer suitable, just for fear of loss, fear of emptiness, fear of no longer having support. That very fear shackles us, making us lose our soul's freedom. The Buddha once pointed out that there are 3 keys to open the door to happiness: acceptance, change, and letting go. Acceptance is when we look directly at reality, whether it's happy or sad, beautiful or challenging. Change is when we actively transform ourselves to adapt, to improve, to move towards the light. And letting go is when we gently put down what is no longer needed on our journey, even if it was once very precious. None of these 3 keys can be missing. If we only accept without changing, we will remain stagnant. If we only change without knowing how to let go, our luggage will be too heavy to travel far. The woman by the lake once thought that her life could only be peaceful if she held on to everything: a good job, close friends, a harmonious family. But the more she tried to hold on, the more exhausted she became. Many relationships that seemed close were full of calculations. Work that seemed stable exhausted her. And even seemingly harmless habits gradually took away her joy. She said there were nights she lay awake, feeling like she was living, but no longer finding meaning. That's when she realized she needed to do something different. Initially, she tried to change her way of working, her way of interacting with people. But she discovered that some things could not be salvaged because their essence was no longer suitable. A friendship where sincerity was lost could not be found again. A work environment where trust was gone could not continue. Changing oneself is important, but sometimes change also means having to let go. And she chose to let go. The day she submitted her resignation, it was late autumn, just like today. Yellow leaves covered the path. She said it was a day that was both well and relieved. Sad to say goodbye to a long journey. Relieved because she finally unlocked the door to step out of her own cramped room. In the months that followed, she took time to rest, to walk more, to plant flowers, to read books she had forgotten. Slowly, she realized she no longer had to live according to the eyes or thoughts of others. She began to live for herself, and happiness returned like an old friend reunited after a long time. Her story made me think of the image of a hand tightly clutching a pebble. The tighter you hold, the more tired and painful your hand becomes. But when you open your hand and the pebble falls, only then can you relax. Only then can you grasp other new things. Life is like that. If we keep clinging to the past, we will have no room for the present and future. Letting go is not loss, but giving ourselves the opportunity to embrace something better. I also remember a line from the Dhammapada: "No one can bathe twice in the same river." The water has flowed, everything has changed, and we ourselves are different. Acceptance, change, and letting go are 3 beats of a circle. If you stop at 1 beat, the circle cannot close, and happiness cannot be complete. In life, everyone will reach a crossroads where they must choose between holding on and letting go. Holding on gives us a sense of security, but security is not necessarily happiness. Letting go might hurt at first, but it's the first step to finding freedom. When we accept everything as it is, change what needs to be changed, and let go of what is past, we will find life suddenly light as a cloud, our hearts calm as water. And if you are in these uncertain days, please remember that you don't need to solve everything in one day, just a little each day. Open your heart to accept, bravely change, and courageously let go. That is how you slowly open the door to step into the inner sanctuary of peace within you. Then the noise of life will gradually fade, and you will clearly hear the heartbeat of your heart, the heartbeat of freedom and happiness. Some evenings, as the sky began to turn towards the mountains, golden light spread across the leaves. We suddenly realized that life is like a vast river. On it, each person sits in their own boat, holding an oar, facing fierce waves or calm stretches of water. And then, sometimes, we wish someone would row for us, take us through the rough stretches of the river. But life is not always a dream. No one can row our lifeboat for us forever. Others can accompany us for a while, but no one can complete the entire journey for us. The Buddha once taught, "Be a lamp unto yourself." This short but profound saying is like a wake-up call to me. It reminds us that if we keep waiting for another hand to pull us out of the swamp, we might wait our whole lives. Each person needs to learn to stand on their own 2 feet, to navigate their own boat through the storms. Because no one lives our life for us, nor can anyone bear our pains or carry our challenges for us. I once met a woman in her early 40s. She recounted a long period of living dependent on others, from parents to husband to friends. Whenever she faced difficulties, she only wished someone would give her a direction, a decision, so she wouldn't have to face it herself. But then, when misfortune struck, everyone was busy with their own lives. She found herself standing lost at a crossroads, not knowing where to go. It was then that she understood. If she didn't learn to master the steering, even if life seemed calm, her boat would easily drift aimlessly. Life is like the sea. It's not always calm. Sometimes the sky is clear and clouds are calm, and we feel ourselves drifting gently. But other times, strong winds arise and waves crash violently. And if we only know to wait for someone to come and save us, we will drown before they can arrive. Independence is not about closing oneself off or refusing help, but rather knowing how to steer one's own boat in all circumstances. It gives us the confidence that no matter if it's a storm or erratic rain and sun, we can still find our way. I remember a story from the Dhammapada. A young man asked the Buddha, "Venerable One, if I cannot find anyone to guide me, can I overcome it on my own?" The Buddha smiled and replied, "He who knows how to walk by himself will reach the destination even before finding a guide. He who relies on others will stop whenever they stop." This answer is simple, yet contains great power, for it affirms that inner strength is the lamp that illuminates each person's path. Independence and self-confidence don't come from knowing everything, but from the belief that we can learn, find a way, and get up every time we stumble. It's like rowing a boat on a river. At first, our hands are clumsy, the oars are out of sync, and the boat rocks unsteadily. But gradually, by experiencing many different stretches of water, we learn to balance, learn to predict the wind direction, and realize we can completely control our own boat. Some people live their whole lives in a comfort zone, letting others choose for them, decide for them. Then they think, that is peace. But such peace is so fragile, because as soon as that person leaves, everything will collapse. True peace is when we know that even if we are alone, we can still stand firm. Self-confidence is not always winning, but not being afraid to lose. Not afraid to face strange river bends, unfamiliar waves. In life, everyone will sometimes long for a shoulder to lean on. But don't forget that we are our own longest companion. If we don't know how to pick ourselves up, how to heal our own wounds, then even if someone offers a hand, we won't have the strength to grasp it. The Buddha taught that relying on oneself is the most stable reliance, because everything external can change. Only inner strength lasts. I want to tell you about an image I really like. Imagine you are rowing a small boat on a lake in the early morning. The water ripples gently. Fog covers everything. Visibility is limited. No one can clearly see the path, and no one stands on the shore to guide you. But if you are patient, focus on each stroke of the oar, listen to the gentle lapping of the water. You will gradually see the sunlight piercing through the mist. Life is the same. Sometimes we cannot immediately see the destination, but as long as we don't put down our oars, we will go further. An independent spirit does not make us lonely. On the contrary, it allows us to love and connect more fully. Because when we are not overly dependent, we can approach others with an equal mindset, not to seek salvation, but to share. And when two people row a boat together, no one has to burden anyone. Both are free to enjoy the journey. If you are going through a difficult period, don't rush to blame yourself for being weak. Just like learning to row a boat, everyone is clumsy at first. Give yourself time. Believe that each small stroke of the oar will accumulate into something big. Don't let external judgments discourage you, because they don't live in your boat. They don't know how many storms you've battled. When we cultivate the habit of relying on ourselves, an extraordinary strength will emerge. It is not noisy, but persistent, like an underground spring nourishing an entire forest. That strength will help us smile even when a storm comes, because we know that we are capable enough to row through it. And the wonderful thing is that when we are confident in ourselves, we also inspire those around us to believe in themselves. So if today you feel lost, start with a small action. Take the oar yourself. That could be a decision you've never dared to make, a step you were previously afraid to take. Don't wait for the sea to be calm to set off, because sometimes the waves themselves will teach you the most. You don't need to become the strongest person immediately. Just advance a little each day, and you will see your boat starting to go in the right direction. And the rough stretches of the river will no longer seem as daunting as before. An independent and confident spirit not only helps us live better, but also helps us see life as more open. Because we know that no matter what happens, we can still keep going. Remember that the sun always rises ahead, no matter how slowly you go. As long as you keep rowing, you will see that light. And when you reach your destination, you will smile with gratitude for not having given up on yourself. Some mornings, when you wake up, you open the window and see the sky covered with gray clouds. There's no brilliant sunshine, no gentle, cool breeze, just a damp space and the pungent smell of earth after last night's rain. You sigh, thinking that today will probably not be a beautiful day. But then, as you're brewing a pot of tea, you suddenly notice sparrows still chirping on the porch. A few last raindrops are falling from the rooftop, creating spreading circles on the water surface. You suddenly feel peaceful. It turns out that a beautiful day doesn't necessarily mean golden sun, nor does it necessarily have to be as we wish. A beautiful day is when our mind knows how to accept what is present. Life is the same. There are times when we try to arrange everything according to our will, wanting others to behave as we expect, wanting life to follow the plan we've drawn. But life doesn't always listen to us. When conditions are ripe, everything is favorable. When conditions end, everything moves away. The Buddha's teaching that some things simply need to be accepted, some people simply need to be let go, reminds us of a very simple truth that is difficult to practice. Everything operates according to the law of cause and effect, karma and conditions, not just individual wishes. If we look deeply, we will see that conditions are invisible threads connecting all events and people in our lives. Someone appearing in your life is not by chance, but the result of many good or not so good seeds planted before. They may come to bring happiness, or they may come to teach you a lesson. When conditions are sufficient, you and they meet and accompany each other for a while. When conditions end, no matter how you try to hold on, the paths still separate. Accepting that is not giving up, but understanding that what belongs to you will stay, and what doesn't belong to you will leave no matter how hard you try to hold on to it. But people are often trapped in the illusion that they can control everything. We want our loved ones to stay with us forever. We want work to always be smooth. We want life to never change. Then, when reality is different, we suffer, complain, and even resent, like trying to hold a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the faster the sand slips away. The Buddha taught that impermanence is not meant to scare us, but to make us live more mindfully. When we know that everything will change, we will cherish what we have instead of just clinging or regretting. There's a story I once heard about a Zen master and a young disciple. That day, they walked together through an autumn field, golden leaves scattered all over the path. The disciple sadly said, "Master, I don't want autumn to pass. I love this cool chill. I love this golden leaf color." The Zen master smiled, picked up a leaf, gave it to him, and said, "Take this leaf. Hold it forever in your hand. Don't let it change color." The disciple was astonished. "But Master, that's impossible." The Zen master gently replied, "Then you understand. Everything is like this leaf. Only when you accept its change can you truly live fully in the moment it is still golden." Living according to conditions is not passive living. Living according to conditions means when conditions arrive, we seize and cherish them. When conditions depart, we smile and bid farewell. That is the attitude of someone who understands impermanence, who knows that everything is happening exactly as it needs to happen. Just as when a river flows around a bend, it doesn't resist but integrates with the new shape of the bank. The river is still itself, but it has learned to flow with nature, to continue its journey. In life, if you learn to go with the flow of nature, you will suffer less mentally. When a relationship is no longer happy, instead of straining to hold on, you can step back and observe. Perhaps the connection between the two of you has run its course. When work is not as desired, instead of tormenting yourself, you can view this as a sign to learn, to open a new direction. Because every closed door carries an opportunity behind it. We just need to be calm enough to recognize it. And you will realize one thing. When you stop clinging, your mind will be light as a cloud. When you stop resisting the current, you will flow more peacefully. Not because life is less stormy, but because within you there is a softness to embrace it. The Buddha's teaching that some things simply need to be accepted, some people simply need to be let go, is not a cold advice to abandon, but an invitation to live with understanding, compassion, and wisdom. Accept to understand, let go to love, and go with the flow to be free. If today you are standing at a confusing crossroads, unsure whether to continue or stop, try sitting down, taking a deep breath, and listening to the beat of your heart. Then ask yourself, is this still connected to me? If the answer is no, then peacefully move forward. Life is not a series of battles for us to win or lose, but a journey for us to learn how to smile in all circumstances. And when you can live like that, you will find you don't need to search for happiness anywhere far away, because happiness is already in every step you take in harmony with your nature. So from today, be gentler with life. Don't fight the rain and wind. And don't force the sun to rise early. Everything comes at its right time. You just need to live fully in the present, open your heart to all good conditions, and peacefully bid farewell to what needs to leave. When you know how to live according to conditions, you will find every day is a beautiful day, no matter what color the sky is. Perhaps by now, having journeyed with me from the very first minutes, listening to each story, each reflection, your heart has softened a little. You may still be facing your own unique challenges, but I believe that you now understand a simple yet important truth. No one can live your life for you. Others can love us, advise us, and even share our tears and smiles. But walking this path is still up to us. And therefore, don't be too concerned with what others think of you. but listen to the true voice within your heart. Life, after all, is like a ferry ride. Some people get on the ferry with us for a while and then get off on the other side. Some sit beside us longer, but they too will eventually have to leave. We cannot force everyone to accompany us forever, nor can we compel anyone to look at us with the eyes we desire. What we can do is steer our own boat steadily, no matter whether the waves out there are fierce or calm. I remember the Buddha's teaching that everyone has their own karma, their own path, their own blessings and conditions. Don't compare, don't complain, and don't try to prove yourself right by chasing after public opinion. For just like a lotus growing in the mud doesn't lose its fragrance because of the mud, we also shouldn't lose our inner peace because of gossip. When the mind is at peace, no storm can make us falter. In life, everyone has been tired from trying to please everyone. Sometimes you've been exhausted, but still forced to smile just to maintain a good image in the eyes of others. Sometimes you've neglected your own needs just to be praised as a good person. But have you noticed that weariness gradually turning into loneliness? Because you are living according to external standards and forgetting what your soul truly yearns for. So I want to remind you of one thing, like a warm farewell before you move on. Live for yourself, but not selfishly, but with self-respect. Living for yourself means knowing what you need, what you want, and daring to walk the path that suits you, even if others don't understand. Thinking of yourself first is not to abandon everyone, but so that you are strong enough, steady enough, and then you can love and help others fully. I want you to remember that everything we experience, whether joy or sorrow, is part of the big picture. Each stumble is an opportunity to grow. Each loss is an opportunity to learn to let go. And every time we smile amidst difficulties, we are lighting a lamp of wisdom for ourselves. Life doesn't promise to always be gentle, but if your mind is at peace, anywhere is a place of serenity. If one day you feel that everything around you is too noisy, find a quiet space, sit down, and listen to the sound of your own breath. Let your breath bring you back to the present moment, to realize that you are still here, still alive, still have the opportunity to love and do meaningful things. Don't let your soul be carried away by judgments. Don't let your heart wither just to please everyone. Instead, let your heart bloom in its own way. Today, I send you a blessing from the bottom of my heart. May you be courageous enough to live authentically. May you be wise enough to let go of what is unnecessary. May you be loving enough to forgive yourself and others. And may you, in every step, feel the warmth of peace. No matter where you are tomorrow, what you do, or who you face, remember that happiness is not found in praise or the approving gaze of others. Happiness lies in how you face yourself each morning when you wake up. As long as your mind is at peace, this whole world will also be gentler. And when this message ends, I hope you don't just listen to these words as a distant story, but integrate them into your daily life. Every time you're struggling amidst challenges, remind yourself, my life, I live it. Every time you worry about what others think, remember their opinions don't define your worth. And every time you feel hurt by misunderstanding, smile. A flower blooms not for the viewer, but because it is a flower. I wish you, from today, a lighter, more peaceful, and freer journey. May the light of wisdom always illuminate the path you choose. May compassion always be in every breath, and may you always find an inner sanctuary of peace, no matter how the outside world changes.